Hey book lovers, I'm Elise and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about all the books that I read in the month of October. October felt like a really long month. I did read some really good books. I think at least 2 of the books that I read are going to be on my best books of the year list. I'm pretty excited about that. So let's look at some statistics. I read 10 books in the month of October. The moods were mostly dark, mysterious, adventurous, and tense. As far as genres, I read 3 fantasy, 2 thriller, 2 romance, 1 mystery, 1 nonfiction, and 1 horror. And altogether my average star rating came out to 3.3. The first book that I read ended up being my absolute favorite read of the month, and that was Assistant to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Mayer. I loved this book. I loved it so much. This book is published by Red Tower Books. They're the same publishing company that did Fourth Wing. I don't know the whole backstory of this series. This is going to be a multi-book series, but apparently it became popular on TikTok. I was not aware of this. I don't know if the author kind of like posted the story in her TikToks. This is a historical romantasy. It's a workplace romance, and it follows Evie. She is kind of the breadwinner of her family. She lives with, I think, just one sister and her father, so she has to have a job. Her last job fell through for some pretty interesting reasons, which you do find out about later on in the books. Evie is kind of at a point where she's a little bit desperate. She needs to get another job, and she comes across the villain. He is notorious in their town for being this like nefarious man. Based off this chance encounter, he ends up hiring Evie to be his assistant. So she goes to this castle and works for him as his assistant. And there's other people that work there, so it's kind of like medieval workplace. It is so funny. It is so sweet. I loved it. I loved absolutely everything about it. Oh my gosh, the characters. There's even a frog. He's up here. That is Kingsley. He's amazing. If you have not picked this up and you like fantasy and quirky romances, I highly suggest that you do pick it up. This was 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. The next book that I read in October was definitely the most unique book that I've read, and that is Black Sheep by Rachel Harrison. This book follows Vesper. She left home when she was 18 years old because her family are like a fanatic religious cult. She doesn't believe in what they believe in, so she skipped town when she was 18, and now she's trying to just, make it on her own. And because she chose to leave her family, she was under the impression that she was like exiled. She wasn't allowed to come back. Well, she ends up getting a wedding invitation. Her cousin is getting married and she's invited to return home for this wedding. She's kind of like, that's weird, but okay. She goes back home and a lot of crazy things happen. This book has one of the craziest 50-page in twists that I have ever read. I actually did do a dedicated reading vlog for this book, so if you haven't watched that, go check it out for some of my deeper thoughts. Overall, I absolutely love this book. Didn't quite feel like a 5-star. There were a couple things that kind of prevented me from wanting to give it 5 stars. It is a very, very, very strong 4-star. The next book that I read was Midnight is the Darkest Hour by Ashley Winstead. I was really excited about this book. I love Ashley Winstead's thrillers. I can never remember her first book with the scissors or the knife. I always want to say Comfort Me with Scissors, and that is not what it's called. You know which one I'm talking about. It's got the scissors on the cover. In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. I loved that one. I loved The Last Housewife. This one I did not love so much. So this book is based in Louisiana in a very religious small town. Ruth is the daughter. Let me just read you the synopsis real quick. This book is for fans of Verity and A Flicker in the Dark. It's a twisted tale of murder, obsessive love, and the beastly urges that lie dormant within us all, even the God-fearing folk of Bottom Springs, Louisiana. In her small hometown, librarian Ruth Cornier has always felt like an outsider, even as her beloved father rains fire and brimstone warnings from the pulpit at Holy Fire Baptist. Unfortunately for Ruth, the only things the townspeople fear more than God and the devil are the myths that haunt the area, like the story of the Low Man, a vampiric figure said to steal into sinners' bedrooms and kill them on moonless nights. In the very beginning, there's a skull found, and it opens up this huge murder investigation that kind of goes back years and years and years. I don't like the synopsis of this book because I feel like it's very misleading to what actually happens. So you go into this book expecting one thing and getting something else, and I don't like when books do that. I felt duped, which I didn't really appreciate, and overall I didn't enjoy this book. I did listen to it on audio, and I think the way that the narrator portrayed Ruth made her come across very immature and naive, so I did not like Ruth. I did not root for her in any way. I did like her love interest. Everett is the love interest. She grew up the daughter of the pastor. He grew up like the son of the town drunk, basically. They became unlikely friends and they kind of grew up together, and so there is a little bit of a romance that develops between them over time. We get two timelines because we get the present timeline and then we do get flashbacks to things that happened in the past. And yeah, this whole thing kind of unravels. Like I said, I didn't really care for this one. I did give it 3 stars. Next book that I read, The Broken Girls by Simone St. James. This one I actually started in September for the Sleep When I'm Dead readathon, but I didn't finish it in time. I did do a readathon vlog. A lot of my thoughts on this one are in that vlog if you want to check it out. It focuses on the school for troubled girls in Vermont in the 1950s. We follow the 1950s storyline. There's girls at this school. There's a legend of a ghost. There's a murder. A girl goes missing. In the present timeline, we follow Fiona. Her sister was found dead on the grounds of Idlewild, which has been closed for like 40 plus years. She's still trying to investigate. The case was closed, somebody was arrested and thrown in jail for the murder of her sister, but for some reason Fiona is still investigating. She finds out that somebody has purchased Idlewild and is trying to get it restored and bring it back up to code to be a school for girls once more. She doesn't like that. She's a journalist, her boyfriend's a cop, she's digging and finding things out. I think I said this in the vlog that I read most of this, and that is Simone St. James. A lot of her stories, they sound really good and they start out really good. Like I love the paranormal parts of her books, but then it kind of fizzles out like halfway through and then just kind of goes downhill. So ultimately, I didn't super enjoy this. It was really spooky and atmospheric at the beginning, which I enjoyed, but about halfway through it kind of just started to go downhill. I did end up rating this one 3 stars. The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling, I did not like it. If you were looking for a very light-hearted, magical, witchy romance, this is definitely the book for you. Like 100%. This was just too light-hearted for me. I didn't really get invested in the story. The characters I found really annoying. The fact that the male love interest, his name is Reese, like Rhysand, that really irritated me. And the fact that he is Welsh. His dialogue has a Welsh dialect and he says things that a Welsh person would say. And the audiobook missed a huge opportunity because they didn't speak his lines with a Welsh accent, which seems weird to me. This was 2 stars. The next book that I read was an audio arc from NetGalley. It is a nonfiction. It's called The Witch's Way to Wealth, An Irreverent Guide to Manifest Money into Your Life Quickly and Magically by Jessie Da Silva. This book was fine. One issue that I have a lot of the times with nonfiction, if it's not a straight up memoir, I don't want to have all of these extra tidbits about you and your personal life. This book was meant to be a financial self-help book with a bit of a witchy twist. The power of manifestation and intention and things like that. It talks a little bit about tarot and crystals, but that was maybe like 50% of the book. The rest of it was about the author. It felt very much like a memoir. She even had a chapter in there about self-love and a positive body image. That is great. I'm not complaining about that. I'm complaining about the fact that that's not what I was wanting to read. It felt too much like a memoir. I didn't want to read about that. I wanted to read about the, you know, the financial side, the witchy side. A 3 star for me. The next book that I read was The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. While The Ex-Hex was too light and fluffy for me, this one was just a little too dark and foreboding. So this book follows Emmanuel. They live in like a puritanical society where witches were burned at the stake or hung. Like I remember what happened in this book, but at the same time I feel like there was so much that happened. So she ends up having to go through the woods to avoid a storm or something because she was taking a goat to market to try and sell it, and it either like ran off in the woods or she had to try to walk in the woods to avoid a storm. Well, the goat gets loose and she has to like chase it in the woods, and she comes upon these witches. Lots of things happen from there. So there's like a lot of like old world magic that takes place in here. There's like a release of plagues upon the town. I went back and forth from being interested in where this book was going and then not interested at all and just kind of reading it to finish it. It was okay. I did like the writing. The writing was really good. The ending was pretty decent. The way everything resolved was pretty cool, and I rated this one 3 stars. The next book that I read, I listened to on audio, When Life Gives You Vampires by Gloria Duke. This one actually got a lot of hate because the main character, a lot of her like internal dialogue is about being a bigger girl and how she's not really happy with that. The entire time that she's grown up, her mom is one of those moms like, oh, maybe you should have a salad instead of, you know, the steak and potatoes. Just commenting on her appearance like all the time. And there's some other things that happened to her in her past that you learn about throughout the book that kind of contributes to her negative self-image. But I did read on Goodreads that a lot of people DNF this because the main character was just so negative about her body image. I see why that's problematic. However, it's super relatable. I feel like most people, they struggle with self-image, okay? Especially women, we're not always happy with what we see in the mirror. And a lot of times we are very focused on having a goal to fit into a smaller size of clothing. So I found the main character to be very relatable. I was kind of bummed that so many people DNF'd the book because they didn't give her the chance to have her character arc. So this book follows Lily, and she wakes up one morning not feeling the best, and she has like this weird craving that she's never had before. She met a guy the night before, things happened, and he bit her and turned her into a vampire. New vampires, they're not like a super prevalent thing, so the fact that there's now a new vampire in the world alerted the essentially the Volturi of this novel's world. So she has to deal with one, being a new vampire and like thirsting for blood, but then she also has to worry about the head vampires, and they're not exactly happy. If you've seen the movie Vamps with Alicia Silverstone and Kristen Davis, I think is her name. Nope, that is Charlotte from Sex and the City. Kristen Ritter. Okay, so Vamps with Alicia Silverstone and Kristen Ritter, it gave me like this similar vibes as that movie. It's a vampire book, but it's quirky, it's fun, it's romantic. I really enjoyed that one and I gave it 4 stars. The Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow. So this book follows 3 sisters, James Juniper, Agnes Amaranth, and Beatrice Belladonna. And when they're younger, something happens and they're separated. A few years go by, and they all kind of run into each other in New Salem. It's the late 1800s, right around the time of the suffragist movement. This book is very heavy in witchcraft, but also feminism and women's rights. I got a lot of practical magic vibes from this, which I did enjoy. And there is quite a bit of LGBT plus representation. There's also the restoration of magic and witchcraft. Witches aren't a thing anymore, they don't exist. But magic still exists. They just have to learn how to harness the power of that. They form this alliance full of women, and they're looking to stick it to the man and restore magic in the world and overcome the evil that is taking place. This was a pretty epic story. 2 of the sisters, I really did enjoy their storylines, not so much James Juniper's, but the other 2 I really enjoyed. The ending I thought was really well done. The writing's really good, but at the same time, I didn't like fully enjoy my reading experience. I never felt like I wanted to pick it back up. Overall, I did give this one 3 stars. And the last book that I read in the month of December, let's try that again. The last book that I read in the month of October is Sign Here by Claudia Lux. This was 3 stars. Interesting concept. I didn't really like the story. I feel like this book is trying to do too much, way too much. So the main character that we're following is Peyote Trip. He works in hell. How do you end up in hell, you may ask? If you basically do a deal with the devil, then when you die, you go to hell and you have to serve out the rest of eternity doing your bidding for hell to recruit new souls. Peyote is on the brink of a promotion because they have like this leaderboard, and if you get somebody from multiple generations of the same family to sign a contract with you to give up their soul, you get major points. And Peyote is on the brink of doing that. So you're following him, and then there's like this new person who was on a lower level of hell and that moved up to his level of hell that he's kind of training. And so then you have her whole backstory, which literally has no importance to the story whatsoever. Like, this book did not need to be 400 pages long. We did not need her storyline. And then you're also following members of the family that Peyote is trying to sign another contract with. Yes, they were connected, but it felt like I was following 3 separate books. If this could have just been from the point of view of Peyote doing deals, trying to get this promotion, that would have been sufficient for this book. This book, I feel like, suffered from debut author syndrome, that the author was trying to just fit too many things into one book. And then also the tone of the book, it's like gritty and aggressive and like, which you don't usually see from female authors. So I found that interesting, but I don't like that tone. I didn't really love this one, but I did rate it 3 stars. Okay, thank goodness, we are done. So those are all the books that I read in the month of October. I started out the month really, really well. Both of these books were amazing. Loved them. Definitely gonna be on my list of favorites for 2023. I highly recommend this one, and I highly recommend this one to people who love horror. Yeah, I feel like the rest of the month kind of just was whatever. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and until next time, bye.